Adam Kurz looking clean with his whole sales team. We ain't come to talk nonsense, it's all about the process and profits. Until we make $1 billion from deposits. He never slacked and teach him to take action. So far from whacking, never gave up his passion. Can't catch him lacking, dapper down on his fashion. He forever stacking, running up all the cash in. Real estate mastermind, check out his book, he gave us the blueprint. Really can't hate the grind, put in the work, no making excuses. Quitting's a waste of time, you made it this far, don't make your life useless. Pull up and taste the wine, he got the flavor, mixing the juices.
Hey, welcome everybody. This is Adam Kurz, and I'm bringing you to another episode of the Freedom Achiever Academy and Freedom Achiever Podcast. I am so excited today, but before I give you all my excitement, I need to make sure that if you're tuned in, listening to this, you're subscribing to this. So if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, like it, comment, share it, baby. If you're listening to this on a podcast feature, share it, let people know what we're talking about, what we're doing, because we are consistently bringing rock star people to the stage here, bringing you knowledge, information, background, real stories, real life, raw and uncut, and we're having fun with it. So speaking of rock stars, let me introduce you guys to Vanessa Lauren, we've been connected for some years now, Vanessa.
Yeah, we have.
We've been connected for some years.
Yeah.
So let me break down rock star status, right? So Vanessa is a real estate agent in Alaska, right?
Yes,
you are a mom, number one, big key point, right? So we're going to talk about that quite a bit. You're United States veteran, you're Air Force veteran, right? Yep. Almost a decade. I was almost a decade. You did a decade or almost a decade? How long were you?
11 years.
11 years. All right. So I did 9 years Marine Corps. You did 11 years Air Force. Miss Alaska for America 2020. Pretty awesome, right? We were having a conversation before this on like the difference between being a great looking woman on the stage for Miss Alaska versus a great looking woman in the Air Force, right? So we'll dig into that a little bit. But first, I want to say thank you for doing this with me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm excited. Thank you so much.
I'm pumped. So let me tell the world how we reconnected. So we follow each other on social media, and
for a long time.
you posted, for a long time, and you posted something that caught my attention right away. And by the way, it's been a topic in my house. Like me and my wife, or I should say, my wife and I, we like go at it a little bit because she has some particular beliefs and I have some particular beliefs. But somebody told me anytime you disagree with somebody on something passionately and you're both passionate about it, the commonality is that you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
So I had this discussion with her last night too, because I told her we were going to do this podcast based on that comment. And the comment was around what's currently happening with the Zuck and him sitting in front of the Senate committee, the Senate Tech Committee, and how they're approaching him and how they're blaming him. And like, so dig in on this, Vanessa. I need to know, because you were like, you made a comment and I was with you, but I want you to tell me. I want you.
Listen, and I just want, for context, I'll say I don't endorse or support any one person ever. I stand for principles, right? Like
100.
I'm not ever going to be put in a box of like conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican. The way I vote is according to principles and ethics, and it has nothing to do with labels, right?
Right.
I am definitely not a Mark Zuckerberg fan per se in any, so there's no defense to him. Whenever I stand for a position, I think about how does that affect everybody else? Right? Like, how does the extrapolating effect of a judgment, a decision, or even a blame that we're casting, how does it affect everybody else? And, what are the implications of that, especially when we're bringing something to the Senate, when we're pouring it out through media, when, I was an intelligence person in the military. So when one aspect of that, as you're aware, is psychological warfare. So when we look at the propaganda that is pushed through media and stuff, it's like there's always so much rhetoric that can be infused in our culture, and so I think it's so important to kind of see through the BS, and So, and I'll say that just for context, and also having raised, I mean, I've been a mom for 21 years. I have a 21-year-old son. I only have boys. And with that, my son was bullied, most of his life, he was bullied. And I was the mom that approached a fourth grader for really, like I did address a fourth grader when my son in fourth grade was being horrifically bullied. And I went to school and I sat in his class, and I'm the Latina mama bear military officer, right? Like, I mean, it's just what it is. So I'm definitely someone that comes, kind of defends her kids, but I'm someone who also holds my kids very accountable for their actions. And I'll be the first one to be responsible for the way I raise my children, the standard that I hold them to, and also just, know where to place responsibility and not get caught in victimhood, right? And so that's just for some, like, the preface of like what my lens is,
Right.
but what I say
Which
is just
I think it's really important that we talk about this. So, you have a son, your son has had some troubles with addiction as well. You've
Mhm.
had to deal with that. And what I just heard you say was it was no one else's fault.
It was no one else's fault. Right. And I mean, there were triggers and reasons of what happened and why he went from even being bullied and falling into homelessness and addiction. And by the way, he's 1 year sober. He's baptized, back walking with God, and and he's been paying his own rent, living on his own. I mean, not a lot of 30-year-olds can say they live on their own and pay their own rent. So
Right.
for being, almost 3 years out in the streets, 4 years of addiction. He since January of 2023, early December, he has been clean. So and fully financially independent. So praise God. Like, as a
That's
mom,
amazing.
like, I'm
That's
so
amazing.
proud. I'm so proud of
That's
him.
as you should be, as you
Right.
should be proud. Yeah.
Not a lot of kids that fall that hard come back that fast, and
Yeah.
it's just all by the grace and glory of God, but what I'll say is that there were reasons and things and triggers and wounds and stuff that happened to him in his life that were really unfortunate. His dad abandoning him, his stepdad abusing him, all the rejection in school, all the rejection in high school, not being able to have friends. He had constitutional growth delay, so he was little. So he even sized out of sports. Like, when he sized out of wrestling and baseball, I tried putting in jujitsu, and he still got bullied in jujitsu, because when kids are small and when they're bullied, they try to overcompensate, and then they're rejected because they're overcompensating, and
Right.
so
Right.
teaching him how to make friends was so hard, and I did keep my kids off of social media. It wasn't until COVID that I had to, like, get a little looser with letting them be on computers because they got torn away from their friend group, but I was the mom that really fought against them getting online. And holding standards in my household where I was the parent that was hated. And yes, they snuck Snapchat, and yes, they snuck things, when I would let them Saturdays only play PS4. It was, if their homework was done and if their chores were done, they would have a certain hours of playing PS4 as they grew up until after COVID and after they were 16, but I think the biggest thing is I took responsibility of raising good humans. And if my
Yeah.
kids were ever caught dead bullying, other kids, they were going to have to deal with wrath of mom. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. And so I'm glad that we brought this context to light because, your comment on Zuck was, what are we thinking, blaming him and Facebook for, and I don't even want to say this carefully, but for the failures of people,
Mhm.
right? It's almost like we're going to blame this technology for the failures of humanity.
And he lets us use it for free. And my problem is that, because I'm not defending Mark Zuckerberg, and that's what I have to say, like, loud. Like, I'm
Yeah,
not
100%.
a fan.
Yeah,
I don't really care. I don't have a dog in the fight with this. But what I'll say is this. And yes, maybe he could be a Satanist pedophile for all I know. but he built a software technology platform that everybody has partaken in, right? And that's exactly the way sin works in our life. When we partake, we agree to his terms and conditions because it belongs to him. And yes, it's gone so big, and the billions of things, billions of users that spend their entire life and build their businesses on his platforms. Yes. But that's why this is when censorship at legislature helps us protect our children and impose policies and things that help technology, but we can never blame him before we've set standards that then he broke the law, right? Like
Right. Right.
if you want censorship for your children in your state, in your country, well, there's legal legislature that has to be raised to create a standard and a law that if he wants to have Facebook in this country, then he has to abide by what we voted for as a whole community.
I agree. Now here's why they have so much trouble. And I was doing some research on this, right? And so the biggest piece of why they have so much trouble is because there are laws in place that protect lawsuits against technology for human error, right? There are actual laws in place for this. And these laws have been criticized by both sides of the party, right? No one's for the situation. However, I think my biggest conundrum is I'm pulling up numbers right now. 3 billion people are on Facebook.
Right.
2.49 billion people with WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook Messenger, WeChat, all over 1 billion users. I'm sorry. The WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook Messenger, WeChat, all each have over 1 billion users. YouTube with 2.49 billion users. And these are all owned by Meta, right? And so basically what we're saying is there's the planet is on social media, right? Like literally, that's what we're saying. Like if you have a cell phone, you're on social media. There's a small fraction of the world that is not actually on social media. And by the way, how much longer does that last? It's not going to last very long, right? So we've got Elon Musk shooting up to the sky. Elon Musk is shooting up to the sky, throwing the Starlink around the world. And his entire mission is to connect the planet through cellular service and internet. And so imagine once everyone has the internet, every person from the Congo to the ice cap, right?
I mean,
every person has the internet. Guess what the next step is? They're going to download the Facebook app and the WhatsApp app and the Instagram app and everything else, right? By the way, there's so much stuff that happens on this. There's scams. There are people that scam people out of money. There's people that duplicate. My account has been duplicated so many times.
Right. And you know, I've been scammed out of money. And when I got scammed out of money, I didn't cry. It was my stupid error.
I've had like 4 or 5 people actually reach out to me and say somebody was using your profile and scam me out of money. Like, and I'm like, dude, did you look at my profile? What made you think I needed $1,000?
You know, and mine was like, because I am in the crypto space and I do transactions, mine was like a spoof account where I, you know, transferred funds. And, you know, I mean, it's like, and I'm the first one to give to people in need. So all I have to say is if somebody needed it that bad, like I pray over it. I'm like, all right, bye, you know, and and so, because think about how much our lives are made convenient by these platforms. I mean, I just made 2 business deals this month on from connecting with people on these platforms. I've made friends. The fact that I know you has only been at the luxury of having these platforms. So we can't kill off something that we actually like have gotten so much tremendous value out of, right? I wouldn't want to go.
There's a tremendous amount of value that we receive, but there's also a lot of negativity, right? So like the scams or the bullying or all that stuff. And so something I said to my wife last night that you might find interesting, and maybe you agree, maybe you don't, but the reason I brought up the user account is because these are not tiny little programs that somebody like created. This is like a world platform, a world software technology, internet-based technology.
Which accounts?
like Facebook,
Oh, yeah.
Instagram, all this stuff, right? Like that's why I brought up the billions of people that are involved in it.
Right.
And so there's no like, I know how hard it is to code a website. Okay.
Yeah, right.
I
Just
can't
a simple website,
imagine.
right. I'm like, if I don't like it, go build one. Okay, no, I'm not building one.
Yeah. And so I can't even imagine the level of intelligence and how many people it takes to run Facebook and make changes. So I told my wife last night, because she was like, okay, but there has to be limitations for children. I said, I agree. But there isn't some like secret lever that Mark just refuses to click. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like it's not like he's like at Facebook headquarters and he punches in a code and the wall opens and there's this secret lever that he can just pull down and all of a sudden all of Facebook is fixed and we can control humanity.
Right. And the reality is that even though I'm so obviously I have children and I actually was sexually abused myself. Do you know when I was 15? This is a true story. When I was 15 and it was AOL dial up, okay? I was 15, the FBI showed up at my house because there was a guy, they found my photo and my profile and my information of a guy on his hard drive that was soliciting children. Yes, and I was one of his like target profiles. And the FBI showed up at my house to talk to my mom when I was no, I must have been 16, right? When internet came out, when I got a computer. So but the reality is, so I've been on the other end of it, right? So I'm not speaking because I'm not pro taking care of kids, and I have a 9-year-old son. If I give him a device, I better know what I'm giving him. And if I don't know, when my boys had their video game room, it was in a loft in our den where they were on their headphones and I could hear every single conversation. So if they were going to be loud and like especially as they got older and they were like cussing and stuff, I'm like, hey, I'm adult. But at the end of the day, when it comes to, because there's different when we're talking about adults preying on children, okay? And yes, but listen, if Mark was a Satanist pedophile, he owns the software. It's up to our laws to
To make the
restrict
change.
him, so that his software, but I can't blame him. I can't put him in jail until we bring the right legislature up to a level that protects children. So we can't get angry. We just need to do the appropriate steps to put the legislature in place to protect the children to the standard that we want to protect our children.
So I'm listening to Senate go in on him, and the senator, I think it was the senator of South Carolina, wouldn't even let him talk.
Oh my God.
You
It
know,
was embarrassing.
and
Can I be honest with you? It was so
and
embarrassing.
he was like, why don't you have things in place to do this, that? And Mark kept saying, well, we are, and we have like industry leading like technology that we're creating to put things in place. But again, there's no secret lever, right? So when
And
I
how
think
can you
about
find
this, I
another
think
way around?
this this is the only thing that exists like this. He is the creator of this whole thing. So in order to have something to monitor it, police it, create something like that is also a new creation that needs to be created and completed, right? And
it's
AI
also
technology, this is not a thing
right?
that you just like sit down one night, created, and like, whoop, there's AI, right? Like,
We're all learning it as we go, right?
right. And so when I look at this and I hear him trying to say we are creating this stuff, and they're saying you don't care about kids and you don't and this is a dude with kids, you know what I mean? And so I'm sure that, and I mean, we all know why he created Facebook. It was like a dating thing for college, right? Like, so
Right.
guys and girls can meet each other in a college,
And for the record,
and
I've
then
met the people that really hate him because they got stolen out of the whole program. So I've met those people too that now
right. So like if he
very
bans you
often.
from Facebook, you're mad. But if something happens on Facebook, you're mad, And so, I said, I was saying last night, and I was thinking about this, and I said, everything you just said right now, I agree with, but also the question comes out, where's the line in the sand? How much government control is needed? Because come on, Vanessa, let's be real. If the government controlled social media, it would be a shit show.
Well, and the thing is that like China, for example, cannot even see their own version of TikTok. Right? Because
Right.
they know they protect their own children. They know that they can't, that their kids would lose their mind and their attention span by the stimulation of these applications. But Americans know that also because, hi, I just quoted it to you. But we don't, because we're too lazy to give
We
our kids.
also know that China blocks it for their kids. Like
Right.
we know
Yeah, we
all
also know that they block it for their own kids.
right.
Right.
But
And
here's the flip side to it also. China only feeds the propaganda they want you to see.
right. And
Right.
that's
So
where,
if you have a Chinese TikTok account, all you know is what the government wants you to know.
right. And the censorship for children, the laws for children need to be a certain level of legislature that comes up because as a parent, there's no stricter law. And to be honest, like this would take all sexual content off of underage users, right? And there's no law, but that's just kids being exposed because what I've found, like one of the squirrely things that got leaked in with my kids, and now my 21-year-olds will tell me how they were exposed to things, right? I have 2 adult boys. And it's when they're in the world. So like when they go into those like Minecraft worlds, Fortnite worlds, where people are building their proprietary
Right. So
world or skins.
why is it the owner of Minecraft and all this shit sitting in the same courtroom with Mark Zuckerberg?
100%. Because
Right.
those kids, like my kids, so there's adults in those Minecraft rooms and in those Fortnite rooms creating images of penises and anime having sex and stuff. And our kids are playing this game and they like go and follow somebody into their world and their skin. And now they're now they're on VR. My son has an Oculus, right?
Yeah.
And so and to be honest, like his dad has the Oculus at his house. So I'm more protective, so I can't control the settings on that Oculus, right? And
Yeah.
there's the Oculus is more free. Like if my 21-year-old son could get into my 9-year-old's Oculus, any 21-year-old can get into my 9-year-old's Oculus.
Right. And it gets deeper, there's that. There's Google. Like, let's face it, children are curious. So if they hear an off comment somewhere, they're smart enough to go to Google, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so why isn't the CEO of Google sitting in that room too?
Because
I'm
there's
sure
a
that
political agenda. And honestly, what I'm hearing, this is just stuff that you learn in debate class. I'm a psych major and all that stuff. So when you're learning, and I mean, I spent years learning child and adolescent psychology and human behavior and behavioral science. I mean, that was my field of study for my entire life. And what I'll say is, it's like what I'm hearing when I hear the Senate berating Mark Zuckerberg, I hear a red herring. Okay. I'm not sure if you're familiar or I'm creating a distraction over here to blame you for something that you're not actually responsible for.
You're not actually responsible for.
Because I need to recruit so many people that have an issue with this to come against you in a specific way to distract from all the other people that are actually the culprits of the problem, and no one's looking over there. No one's
And by the way, so something came up yesterday, the people wearing I am worth more than $270 or something like that. And it was like from a statement where so there was a statement that came out that Meta had done some market research and that children had a value, right, for marketing at $270 or something like that. Like a child can influence about $270.
Okay, we're both realtors. We know that we track data, that we try to get in predictive marketing. Okay, like this is something that is.
I mean, this is not rocket science. So in this conversation, I'm thinking to myself,
anybody searching for a home, if you're in my neighborhood, you're gonna probably get my ad. Like,
yeah. And by the way, I said last night, if you're a parent, you're upset that they actually said that, then you better take your kids off TV. You better take their phone away. You better get rid of every Google Home device you have in your house and Alexa and everything else, because they're all doing the same thing, by the way, right? Like, so I was talking to my wife. I said, when I was a little boy watching G.I. Joe on Saturday morning, what do you think the commercials were about?
Cigarettes.
And toys and things I can influence. Right? As a child, oh, mom, I want that.
Oh, right. When we were watching the toys, we would run to our parents. Yeah.
You know, and then cigarettes was during Dukes of Hazzard. I remember.
Yeah. or the other like almost older shows. Right. Or in the evening. But I mean, it was marketing on TV. Absolutely. But you know what's crazy is, I mean, I'm going to sound crazy probably, but I haven't had TV since 2008.
That's awesome.
Right? Like, because I had to make a decision of what this real estate in my brain was going to be
absorbing, what was going to be built inside that real estate.
Right. Like, my mental real estate is not for garbage, and I will not. And, you know, even shows, and it's crazy because obviously I've been in acting and I love performing arts. But what the crazy thing is that, I'm very careful what I pick. I don't get into series because I'm like, why am I watching a fictional life when I need to create mine?
Yeah.
Why am I watching someone's pretend story when I need to be building my fairy tale in my real tangible life?
And then you finish watching the fairy tale and you go, oh, what a great life. I wish I had that life.
You know what? You do know the day I was so into a show. So, and this is when 2008, when I vowed off TV forever. Okay. I was so into the show. I think we were like in season 3. And I was so into these characters, and it was awesome. It was a Courtney Cox show. I forget what it's called, but there was a schizophrenic guy in it. And so it was awesome because it was about the paparazzi, but the storyline with them was like real. And it was a racy show, and it was so interesting, right? Because you were watching somebody with mental health issues. So the schizophrenic guy was the paparazzi, and I loved his storyline. And do you know, at season 3, they X'd the show. And it hurt me for like 2 weeks. I was like, what happened to that guy? What happened to that? You know, and it bothered me. And I was like, those people are not real.
They're not real. Listen, I'm not going to lie. I don't watch a lot of TV. And when I do, I'll like pick a show, and that'll be my show that I'll watch for like however long it takes to get through it, because I don't watch a lot of TV. Usually when I do, maybe I had this like crazy day that lasted from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. And now I'm just trying to wind down for like half hour, you know? And so I don't watch live TV. It's like a Netflix or an Amazon thing, you know? Yeah. But I do love, because I grew up during comic book, like frenzy and, you know, real cartoons, not the shit that's out now.
Yeah, no, it's so weird.
And so like all these Marvel movies for the longest time and the DC movies, I'm all into them because I'm like, I grab my kids. And by the way, I have daughters, right? So I'm like grabbing my girls. I'm like, we're going to watch this. Like, you know, we're going to watch like fucking Superman. Let's go. You know? And so it's funny I brought that up because I know exactly what you mean. When I found out that Henry Cavill was not going to be Superman anymore, I was like, oh, they're always messing up everything, you know?
Right. And we're like, why are my emotions involved in this?
Why am I so vested in this?
It's not my life. It's not my life. Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I was an athlete growing up. I was a wrestler, like, you know, and it's so funny because even with sports, I'm like, if I am not investing the same amount of passion into my personal sport, whatever that is, whether I'm an athlete, whether I'm a business person, whether I'm a minister, if I'm not working on being the best at my own craft, why am I going to waste so much energy watching someone else be great?
Yeah. No, I can't do it. You know, and man, I'm glad you brought this up because I think so many people are spending way too much time on fucking football and basketball. They'll watch every game. They can't miss it. Burning away Sundays, burning
And
away
you're not
weeknights.
taking care of your kids and not building your own relationships and having a miserable marriage. Like,
Pissed
because
off
the
at the
reality
TV, throwing furniture because your favorite team lost. I'm like, come on, man. And so it's just not my thing. Like, I'm just not that big into sports. I have favorite teams. I do. I'm a New York Giants
I'll go
fan
to a
because
Super Bowl party. Like, let's do it.
yeah,
If I was
I'm a
married
New York
to-
Giants fan and I'm a New York Yankees fan because I grew up in New York. That's it.
And and for the record, if I was dating a 49ers player, then I would be at every practice, every game. I would be all about
Yeah.
just like when my ex-husband was I've been married twice. Once he was in the military and I was a military spouse for 7 years. I knew all about the C-17, all about the C-130. Why? Because when my husband came home, I learned about his job. I asked him about what he was doing. I was a wife that was invested in what he did, and then I joined the military. Right.
Yeah.
And then I joined the military. And then when the next relationship that I was in that marriage for 10 years. The next relationship I was in, I was with him for 6, and he was a general contractor. I built a construction company. I learned how to tile. I get behind and involved whatever my partner is because that's their passion. So if I was married to a football player because that happens to be his
Then you'd be into football.
and I'd be in the football. But if that's not
my wife and I are both real estate, so it is what it is,
Right.
And like I was telling you earlier today, I've been selling real estate 19 years. Like, my business is never going to go anywhere. I have relationships with all my past clients, so forth, so on. But I put 100% focus in this coaching business that I have. So I'm like, that's where my brain is at. And my wife gets it because she's mentored, she's coached, she's ran a team, she's done all that stuff, and so we can communicate. Like, at the end of the day, I can have
language and you understand her needs and you understand why she's stressed and you understand what's a big deal to her, what's a little deal to her, why it matters. It's great.
Yep. Man, I don't know, man. I just think that too many people are wasting too much time. And
focus on other people's lives. Focus on, and you're not censoring your own children. I'll tell you something, David. Do you know?
And man, Vanessa, that's what I wanted to get at. Go ahead, say your thing, because I got something to touch on that.
Yeah, my boys play multiple instruments. My oldest plays the ukulele, the guitar. They all can solve a Rubik's Cube. Do you know why? Because they weren't on video games. I was making them use their brain. I was making, and when they were upset about it, guess what Mom did? Too bad, guys. Do you want to work in the yard? Sorry, whoops. Do you want to work in the yard? Do you want to go mow the lawn? Do you want to chop down some wood? Do you want to wash my car? You're bored? Okay. Guess what? Electronics was not you know what I would always say? I'd be like, if you're bored, your life is not hard enough. So I can help you.
I can help you with that. Don't worry about it.
Help me with that.
Listen, I got chores galore that I don't want to do. I ain't got time to do. And
I would tell them, go start a business, go go do something productive, go build a fort outside. I don't care. Become a BMX rider, build a track in the yard, do something else. You're not playing video games.
My ex-wife used to call it child labor. She goes, child labor is free. Let's go, girls.
And you know what? It's skill building. Yeah. And for the record today, right? I hire help. I hire things that I don't want to do in my life. But I often say, listen, I proved my entire life I know how to scrub a toilet. And now I appreciate my housekeeper that much more. Thank you, Jesus. Here's your paycheck. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And there's a big difference with that. There's a time and a place for that. There's a time in your life for that, right? So like,
and it keeps you humble.
In my book, I speak about the difference between time management and time valuement, right? Which I got from a good friend of mine, Nick Sarnicola, being at a mastermind with him. And Nick was, he was the founder of Body by Vi. Remember the 90-day challenge back in the day? I remember him, yeah. So Nick's a great guy, really, really intelligent dude. And he had this concept about time valuement. And I remember sitting down, and I've heard so many people talk, and I've been on so many stages that a lot of it just sounds like repetitive, And as soon as he said the word time valuement, I was like, huh? What did you just say? So I sat down and I started really paying attention, and he made the book because I attended that mastermind, And that's exactly what it was. It's like, listen, you get to a point in time where everybody speaks about time management, organizing themselves, and that's understood. But then eventually at some point you have to get into time valuement, which means that you place your time, or you place on your time the things that you value the most, right? Or the things that are the most money making activities, the MMAs, right? Everything else you farm out, you leverage or labor out, right? So like getting a housekeeper to come clean the house, or the yard guy to cut my grass because I live on half an acre that I really don't want to push a lawnmower around, right? Like, you know, there's
you'd rather be throwing a ball with your kids, or you'd rather be like taking your girls to a pedicure because that quality time with your children is more valuable than mowing the lawn. And so we have to,
or watching them be beast mode on the volleyball court, you know, because that's what we do.
Yeah, you know, and I never watched Star Wars, but I had to become a Star Wars expert because that's the language that my boys spoke, you know, and it was like I had to go do all the boys things. I was the mom on the wrestling mat with my boy, you know, cheering him on because they didn't have a dad, you know, so I was the mom that went and did all that stuff. There was a point you wanted to make before I said that though, David. I was talking about people are wasting their lives, focus on other people's lives, and they're not
raising their kids. And I think that's a big piece, right? So what has happened over time since the invention of the cell phone and social media and YouTube and everything else is that the cell phone and the apps have become the babysitter, right? And so a lot of these parents, honestly, they kiss my ass with their bullshit because they're blaming everybody else for the failures that they've created in their own parenting. And you know, listen, my kids, my two older kids, they couldn't touch social media till they were 16 years old, right? My current wife, we're a blended family. I have two, she has two. So the little ones that we have in the house now, her number was 15. And so she said, okay, when you turn 15, yeah, same thing, tit for tat, right? And so they have, but what happens when you give a kid for the first time social media at 15, 16 years old is that it really isn't that important to them. Like, it really isn't that important. They can't wait to get on because all their friends have it. And then they get on and they go, well, I've lived without this for so long that it's not a priority for me to get into. And so what my kids really use like Instagram for, and I watch them, and TikTok is to watch silly videos or cooking
they're just
videos.
Funny. They're laughing and laughing.
Yeah, like I hear them giggling every 2 seconds, and I kind of lean over their shoulders and I see, and it's some teenage boy like doing something stupid, you know, and like dancing around or whatever the case is. And so we pay attention, and my wife has time control of their phones. She can shut them down from her cell phone. She can see what they're doing from her cell phone.
David,
right?
really What is really important to speak to you here is that we have to realize that if as adults, if you pick up your phone, you know that you automatically check your messages, your Instagram, your Facebook. It becomes such a brain automatic thing that if as an adult, I even have a hard time sometimes, like with my own self-control. Can you imagine a growing brain of an adolescent who their frontal lobe is not developed, so they can't even like control their impulse sensor? Like, if you don't protect the amount of stimulation on their brain, and why there's so many kids with ADHD now, because we're putting devices in front of them, and now their attention span from flipping and flipping and flipping, it's not trained to stay on a page long enough, that now they can't study. So now we're putting them on drugs because they have ADHD. But when we've conditioned yeah, it's crazy. And you know what's crazy is that when my son is 21, right? So when I had him, it was 22. He was born in 2002. So 2003, 2004, 2005, 2006. I'm bringing you back to that time when my son was a baby, and he was 3 or 2, where people bring these out to keep their kids, you know, babysat. I was only 20, 21, 22. I had my son at 20 years old. You know what I said? No, you're not going to play with my phone. Number one, it was expensive. And number two, then your child, when I would watch babies throw a tantrum because their mom wouldn't give them their phone, I was like, nope, we're not starting that game. If I give you a phone and then I take it away from you, and now you're screaming and throwing a tantrum because I had to take my phone away that I pay for. No. And I think that as parents, we don't keep ourselves as the authority in the house.
Yeah.
And when we give, now we are at the mercy of our child's tantrums, whether it's a toddler or whether it's a teenager throwing a tantrum. Now we
Right.
feel like we have to bend and we have to bend and we have to bend. And one principle and one value that I always held in my house as my kids got older is responsibilities before privileges. And like I had that written down. And if you took your privilege before you're done with your responsibilities, you lost everything. And I
Yeah.
would tell them everything is a privilege. If you have, and I gave my kids iPads, that's how they started to like, it was first a Kindle, and then I think the Fire had some sort of little where they could just do children.
Right.
Leapfrog had a children's game. So I didn't give them my phone, but they had their little kids pad, right, that they would have, but they had to earn it. It was a privilege, and it was always a privilege. And if they didn't act right, they didn't get it.
Yeah.
The concept.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is where, and look, I want to put a disclaimer out there. And this disclaimer is that there are some great parents out there. They just didn't catch something on the phone. And listen, by all means. But if you are not monitoring your child's phone, it is not Mark Zuckerberg's fault. If you are not, putting limits on the social media yourself, which, by the way, all of these phones, all of them, every single one of them, smart tech, you can go in there, put a parental code on them and set times and what apps they can open and everything else. You can do all that. And
my kids were hackers. My kids are hacker level intelligent. Okay. And and this is for the parents that because I lost my mind with it. Like I have boys, guys. So for me, like even access to porn and all that stuff. I mean, I really tried to suppress, all of that stuff. So
and they would figure out a way,
because I had remote cameras. Then I had controlled internet. So it's not only is the IP address regulated, but I'm controlling when it's on and when it's off, right? The router, and then the video cams that I could speak through. And then I'm like the restrictions on their physical device that would, restrict the apps. And my kids would hack all of it.
Which is the next point is that even if that leads me to the next point, because even if we raise legislation, we create rules and laws and so forth and so on, there's still going to be ways around it, right? Because today, if you open up a new Facebook account, it's going to ask you, what's your age, what's your birthday, blah, blah. Same thing with Facebook, right? Like Facebook, Instagram, what's your birthday, this and that. And then based on that information, you have to either send a message to your parents, or your parent could click a link to approve,
they make
or
their own email. They say they're an adult. Like it's
that's it. All they gotta do is put a fake birthday.
There's no ID required.
No, there isn't.
Which maybe should be a thing. But then my kid would be the one taking the ID out of my wallet.
And then here's the crazy part. So we'll say maybe there should be ID requirement, and then everybody's gonna go. They'll vote on that. Boom, 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 boom. Yes, ID requirement to get on social media so we can verify age. And then there will be a riot outside of Congress because nobody wants to upload their ID card into Facebook because now Meta's gonna have all your ID information.
Well, then you can have,
There's no winning here. No matter which direction you go, there's no winning. We alluded to that earlier when we talked about how people get so pissed off at Meta when they kick them off Facebook, and they're pissed off at them when they're on Facebook, and the algorithm and my thing's not getting enough views, and this and that, and I posted something about the government and it was taken down, and it's so
it's such a mind
Vanessa, it's a shit show. That's what it is.
It's a shit show. But you know what the crazy thing is?
Because I said to my wife, she goes, well, let's put some restrictions on the kids, this and that, blah, blah. I go, I agree. Here's the problem though. As soon as they do that, there's going to be a new group that comes across that says, well, where's the line for the government? Like at what point, how much control do they actually have? And are they now going to start feeding us government propaganda to get the world to follow them? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so like, imagine what elections would be like if the White House ran social media.
Well, and the reality is that like when I had to, and because I am a woman of God, a child of God, right? And I had to realize that the most important thing was to model what I wanted my kids to be, right? I'm proud of my children, not because of accolade, not because of what they did, not because of whether, because they're good humans. They're good-hearted humans. They are kind, they are loving, they are inclusive to people, they are generous, they are intelligent. Like, and I had to model that. They had to watch me bring in homeless people that got hurt from the earthquake. They had to watch, I had to create a lifestyle that taught them those values and took them to put their hands in serving and making sandwiches for the homeless so that they could intrinsically create the desire to care for somebody else when it didn't benefit them, right? When they didn't earn a dollar, and why were they getting up early to go make sandwiches for the homeless people when, it was their sacrifice to serve somebody else and it didn't benefit them, but it made them feel good. And so when kids develop their intrinsic worth, then they know, hey, don't hurt the misfortune, don't hurt the less fortunate, that they're the ones standing up to the bullies. And when my son was getting bullied and when my son aged out of sports, so now he can't be on his baseball team because he's not strong enough as a pitcher. Now he can't, you know what I mean? Like, it's like all these things that, and he's so discouraged and depressed. And as a child trying to find his identity, and my ex-husband, who was his stepdad, being really hard on him and being mean because he has ADHD and all this stuff. And he's too smart for his peers. And I mean, it was a nightmare. I had to teach my son that his self-worth didn't come from the opinions or the criticism of others. And if he was overcompensating and being obnoxious and repelling people, then that was something that he was doing that was toxic and unhealthy, that was breaking his relationships. And I wasn't going, oh, poor baby. I sent him to personal development classes at 16 years old. I sent him to a teen one. It's called PSI. I'll totally plug it. PSIseminars.com or .org. Look it up. But I sent my son to the teen experience at 16 because he was so bullied and excluded. Then I sent him through the entire leadership when he turned 20 years old and finally got out of addiction, besides prayer and standing with my son and being in the hospitals with him, and pulling him out of the streets. I also showed my son that I was going to love him unconditionally, regardless if he was an addict. I showed my son that I was never going to give up on him, and I was going to chase him down to the end of the earth. And I also put him through the personal development program so that he could build his inner man and his inner worth so that he could be a good human and pursue his dreams with the confidence that he needs to do whatever God called him to do, whatever that is. Because whatever God called you to do, that's where you're going to fulfill the purpose in your life, right? Regardless of what it is,
So I'm going to say, I think, and hopefully nobody misconstrues the message. We understand that parenting is difficult, and we understand that you can't control everything that your child does. The one thing that I will say is that we cannot point the fingers at others, right? So we have to take responsibility, especially as parents. We have to take a certain level of responsibility. We can't control everything they can do like that, and that is super obvious. And there will be some things that is not your fault as a parent. It is hard to raise children.
I was a single mom of 3 boys running a real estate business. I was like, oh my God. So I know it's hard.
Listen, I'm super pumped that we had this conversation because these are the types of conversations that I want to bring to light and to the table. My little motto is becoming, I want to have the conversations people are too afraid to have, and so I'm blessed to have a platform and a following and people, and I'm sure we'll lose some people. Like, people are going to listen to this podcast and say, fuck you, my kid my kid got bullied on social media, or my kid, I read an article about a child who, I read an article of a child that ordered a pill from Snapchat and died from fentanyl. That's a horrible story. That is a horrible story. But as horrible as that is, I don't know that we can blame Mark Zuckerberg for that.
No.
Right? We could definitely blame the human being behind the computer and the screen that sent a child the fucking pill. That's who we should be pointing at.
Right. And you know, it's like, and even like with if McDonald's is a silly example, it's poison. We know it's poison. And those of us that grew up in the 90s that are addicted to it, like me, I have to force myself not to eat that because I grew up as a poor kid and the treat was go to McDonald's. So if I walk in like it stimulates.
McDonald's to get a 49-cent cheeseburger.
Yeah. And but
listen, ladies and gentlemen, there is no cow in this world that you can make 49-cent cheeseburgers from. Okay. So that is not meat, ladies and gentlemen. All right.
But am I going to blame McDonald's for cancer? Like I ate it.
Yes. I mean, I think there were, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but there are people who sued McDonald's because they became obese.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, what world do we live in? You know, what world do we live in?
So now legislature to take all that. And now we're actually doing like meat that's not real that is going into these food chains, right? Like everybody knows that.
We're forcing food chains to list on the menu how many calories food has. And
not the ingredients.
But not the ingredients. And by the way, we're totally pro cloning chickens because we need more food.
Right. And for the record, in America's defense, this is what I also say, because I have been in like the health and wellness industry also, you know, and I was in the medical field for 7 years. The reality is that there's not another model like the US. Okay, so this is not to bash the US. Like Europe, they don't distribute food like you're like any, you know, well, who else? China's population is all the way down to the south. So is Russia's. Like, look at another country with a land mass and the population density that the United States has. There's not another model to follow to give us the food that we have, you know, or that we need, that's healthy, that's organic, that's, you know, with the right protein.
There's not enough. There's not enough. You know, I had a conversation with somebody the other day. They lived in Europe for like a year or two or something like that. And they said, you know, there's so many foods that are actually banned in Europe that are allowed in the United States because they know that this food is significantly bad for the people.
And it has to be sustainable to get
to and I said, you know, I feel you. That's horrible. I wish that we could ban that stuff, but then we would have less products to be able to feed the country. And it's not the greatest situation. It's not the answer, but I don't know what is the answer. Like, I don't know how to create more food for this many people. What's that?
Americans should be eating less. You know, when I went right now, when I'm helping my mom's health, when she wants to buy cereal and bread, I'm like, no. Like, all we need is, you know, organic protein. So it's like, really, we don't need a lot of stuff, but we want a lot of things.
We want a lot of stuff. We are a consumer nation. And that is all we do. We literally consume. That is what we do. We consume everything from food to product to Facebook. And
that's why we're obese.
Instagram to, yes, that's why, you know, oh man, I forget his name, but there's this guy that I follow. Oh, why can't I think of his name right now? Anyway, he's got this podcast. I follow it. I'm having a brain fart right now, so I can't remember his name, but he talks about the average male in America, and he says it's disgusting. He goes, I can close my eyes and see him right now sitting on the couch with his fat stomach and, you know, eating Cheetos and Tito dust filling up in his freaking belly button while he watches a football game and gets mad about a team he doesn't own.
Those are like no purpose. Those are just people without purpose. Because if you had purpose, if you had vision in your life, if you knew you were significant, you would go create something to make your life more valuable than sitting there and overeating because we have nothing better to do.
Yes. You know it too, because sometimes we get bored, and what do? First thing you do, you walk over to the kitchen, you open the fridge with no purpose.
Like, you just were here. You're not hungry. Go back.
Yeah, just zero purpose. Looking in the fridge, then you close it back up. Then you walk around the kitchen, ain't nothing there, so you go back to the fridge and look again, just in case you missed something. You know what I mean? I get it, man. I get it.
What is this? What is that? What's driving?
we need to be significantly better than that as a people. Listen, if you're a parent out there and you're having trouble raising your kid and your kid's being bullied on social media or stuff like that, like, dude, if they're being bullied on social media, take the fucking social media away. Shut it down, man. And then more than anything, as a parent, there's one important thing that you absolutely need to do. And I'm not trying to tell anybody how to parent their children, but the one thing that you need to do is teach your children their self-worth. Prove to them that they are worth every pound of flesh that they have on their body, that they are beautiful human beings, that they deserve to be on this planet, that they have a purpose on this planet, that God has given them a reason to live on this planet. Prove it to them on a daily basis and do it through love, And that's
telling them how special they are to you. Like, you bring a smile to my face. You know what I mean? Like, even sometimes when I've had to tell my son, I love it when you're sleeping, because
you're so well behaved when you're sleeping.
Like, I'll go lay in his bed and I'll hold him and he'll be like, Mom, what are you doing? I just love you when you're sleeping. It's the only time I can appreciate you right now. And I'm praying over you, but because it's hard. And for the record, like, if anybody resonates with what we've said, I'm open for questions and like advice or like strategies, because this is what I tell every day. Every time, David, I always tell people when I'm talking about parenting, y'all are liars. All these adults walking around with their mouth tightened, like their house is fine. The reality is we are all suffering with teenagers. It is not easy, and nobody's telling the truth that raising kids is hard, because then it makes us be embarrassed that we don't have control in our house.
100%.
And so
100%.
You have to be the most creative human on the planet to learn how to raise kids.
Yes.
And it's so hard. So reaching out to
people, it is hard.
Advice is so important.
Well, Vanessa, how can they follow you on Instagram? Because if you're watching this, we got a banner on the bottom. Her Instagram is right there. But for the listeners, where can they follow you?
Yeah, I am mostly on Instagram, probably with most amount of followers. My Facebook is well, that's still, you can find me at Vanessa Lauren Noble. It's my married name on Facebook. I post a little more ministry stuff, a little more faith-based things. I am pretty vocal with the faith-based things. So if that offends you, I'm not going to be your favorite person. It's just the reality. But I'm always willing to help regardless if we differ on views, so, and what I like to do, the way I like to help people is what works for you, for your life. Because as a mom of 3 boys, I had to learn new strategies for each one, because not the same approach worked for any of them.
Work for everybody. Absolutely. No, I've got 4 daughters, so I know.
Yes, you're like, I have to be so creative to parent you. And I went
except for when they're all connected. Sometimes they get this, like, I don't know if it's a female intuition connection that all my daughters get sometimes, where I feel unsafe in the house. You know what I mean? And I need to like find something else to do outside the house. That's when I'm going to the gym 2-3 times a day. You know what's going on in my house.
During this week of the month, Dad is on a fishing trip. Okay, y'all have fun.
Y'all have fun being mad at each other in here. I'll be back in a week. I'm trying to plan my work trips around this shit.
Yes. You're like, let me see all of your ovulation calendars, because I need to be gone.
These kids be syncing up.
Oh yeah, I lived in a house with 10 women. It was like a sorority. We all volunteered at church and stuff. And no, we weren't part of the Mormon church. We were just a normal church, but we all lived in the house together. And it was so awesome. But we all would sync up, actually half the house. There was 2. So that was even worse, because at least if everybody syncs up on one schedule, but when there's 2 schedules happening in the house.
Yeah.
But it's funny because what I have found, and I probably don't have it as bad as some women. What I have found is that's my time where I have to apologize a lot. I have to apologize a lot for being impatient with people. And it's a very humbling time, but I'm like, okay, I get to grow in saying I'm sorry.
I joke with my wife, because my wife never has a problem when she's on it. It's the week before.
Yeah.
So,
But I know my telling is if
she'll
I'm
get she'll get like a little snippy with me, and I'm like, okay. You know, how's your body temperature, sweetheart?
And I know myself because I'm always so conscious of my food. So when I'm like fiending in the closet at night with the cookies or something sweet, or like I need to secretly go to the gas station to get like a Reese's peanut butter bar, I'm like, oh yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
that's what it is.
that's my cue.
That's
I feel like
awesome.
sugar's a drug. I'm like fiending like a cracker.
I love it, man. Vanessa, thank you for spending an hour with me. This is pretty awesome.
But
I
I
know
was
that people are going to really enjoy this.
we need to
I
do
think it was
another one on
amazing.
the military.
Yeah, we do. We do. We need to speak about the military. I think that'd be a great opportunity. I mean, we both have about a decade into the military, and we can speak about each other's experiences. I'm sure mine were very different than yours.
Yeah.
We're gonna name that one from the Air Force to the stage, and just outline it like future
Yeah,
Miss
or
America.
there couldn't be a broader spectrum than Air Force to the Marine Corps. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, big time.
Such different perspectives. But yeah.
Well, thank you again for doing this with me. For ladies and gentlemen that are listening, if you made it through the end of the show, it means you enjoyed it. So please hit the subscribe button, follow Vanessa, ask her any questions that you want to ask her. You can follow me at David Adam Kurz on any social media platform. If you want to learn more about me, everythingdavidkurz.com. That's my website. You can check me out there. Want to finish off on a couple things. We're going to keep doing this podcast with amazing people. This is the Freedom Achiever podcast. I have a separate podcast that I do every single week called the David Adam Kurz Show, where I speak to you by myself. And I want you guys to go ahead and follow those. So if you go to everythingdavidkurz.com, you're going to have access to both podcasts. You're going to have access to our YouTube with almost 1,000 videos in it. You're going to have access to my book, which just came out, which is The Truth About Failure, where we get into the ingrained mentality of the thought process of failing forward and how much bullshit is in that statement. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and we appreciate you, and we'll see you guys soon.
Bye.